Hey all, what's up? It's the video you've all been waiting for, my Maid Privaty analysis and review. And as you all know, for those who've been keeping up with my streams, I've been doing some intensive testing for the past week or so with Maid Privaty. This is probably the longest testing I've ever done on a unit, spanning across multiple days and beating some of the units where I spent over 20 plus hours in a single sitting. Normally I just finish testing within a day, but there are so many things to take into account for her that it took this long. And it's for a particular reason. For the past few while now, ever since Tove came out, you guys should know how long I've been waiting for a proper shotgun team. It felt like Maid Privaty was the last missing piece of the puzzle. Or is she? To answer this question, I've went through numerous iterations and variables and varying team compositions. As you all have known from my previous videos, I have made significant investments to all my units, overloaded, skilled up, pretty much all of the relevant ones. However, I want to put a disclaimer that I did try to put them all as close to each other as possible, but there are some discrepancies on actual performance to other people's account, as each account may have varying overloads and investments. With that out of the way, let's answer some of the questions right away, and I'll explain myself along as well while answering these questions. Do you need both Tove and Leona with her? Not both, actually. This is the most common question thrown out to me, and the answer is that you need at least one of them. The main reason lies within Privaty's skill 2, which requires her to get enough hit count from pellets to stack during full burst. Reaching the max stacks is pretty much impossible without one or the other. Obviously, having both greatly increases her damage and you can reach the max stacks faster. That can be carried throughout the full burst. But having both also has some trade-offs. For one, having both typically means you are severely limited on your 4th and 5th unit in your team. If a boss requires healing, then you're left with pretty much a burst 3 healer like Helm or an off burst healer, which is what I call when healers that can heal without bursting on their own. And the most popular choice right now is Marciana, as she can provide lifesteal to the team and also is a shotgun that benefits off Tove and Leona's buffs. Another is there is no cooldown reduction unit that can fit unless we put it on the 5th slot. For reference, in a 3-minute fight, without cooldown reduction, it allows us to do 9 bursts. With 1 cooldown reduction, and that's just autoing, you can get up to around 11 bursts. This entirely depends if we can also charge faster and catch up to the cooldown. With fast charging, we can get up to 13 full bursts. Fast charging is where you use a sniper or rocket launcher to shoot fast and use it to get a lot of energy burst. Where the number is an odd number, what this also means is if we burst first with Maid Privaty, we can end the fight with her bursting as well. As you can see, this does limit our team building. However, because of this also, this allows us for some creative teams or unique teams that don't even conflict with other traditional teams. How to build Maid Privaty. Before I get started with the teams, let's talk about investments. I've talked about Tove and Leona before and my guide sheet has it, but I'll add them here because they're primarily relevant for Maid Privaty. For Tove, her skill is a must at level 9. This increases your chance on maintaining her stacks, which is extremely huge for the damage increase that she provides to the shotgun team. Part of the biggest reason why my testing took so long is because the RNG happening with her in your team. Ideally, you want to burst first after you have gained max stacks on her. Sometimes your stacks drop right before your burst or during your burst, which affects the damage greatly. And even if you could manually control this, intentionally waiting for your stacks to max out before bursting could end you up with lacking final burst. Remember what I said before, how you could get up to 9 bursts and end up bursting with Maid Privaty if you burst with her first? Yeah, intentionally delaying your burst might make you end up not being able to get that final burst in. And because of this, Tove runs tend to be RNG. Next, Tove's skill 2 has breakpoints of level 4, level 7, and level 10. Try to make sure to hit these breakpoints whenever upgrading her. If you're in a budget mode, it's okay to be level 4. Next is Tove's burst. This one is upgrade as much as you're willing to believe in a shotgun team. The budget is 4, recommended is 7+. Just go as high as you can. For overload for Tove, I would get at least 2 lines of max ammo. The more the better. You can go even up to 4 lines. Then the rest is filled with whatever, but obviously attack and elemental are good. Tove with Bastion is because with enough max ammo, you could actually possibly get nearly infinite ammo with her. With max ammo lines, and then her skill 1 that restores back magazine, and then the Cube Bastion. In a theoretical sense, she could go nearly infinite ammo. Next up is Leona. Leona is pretty simple. Her skill 1 and burst can be kept at level 4, and you can go further if you want for more damage. For her skill 2, however, at minimum you should be level 7 so that her pellet increase counts works with Maid Privaty. For overload, I would likely not even overload her just because of resources, and nothing on her skill severely cries for overload. But if you do want to overload her, then I would aim for at least like 1 max ammo, and then the rest is fill whatever. Obviously attack and elemental again, but because of her buffs, she can build crit rate and crit damage also. For Cube, I would give her resilience. We do want to minimize the gap between her stacks. If she get caught in a bad reload time, then it'd be pretty bad. For Maid Privaty, all her skills scale relatively evenly. If you have both Tove and Leona, I would advise leveling skill 1, skill 2, and burst evenly at the same time. If you have neither, then skill 2 can be ignored and you can focus on just skill 1 and burst. But if you don't have either Tove or Leona, then Scarlet will likely come out more on top for relatively less investment. I guess if there's any main downside is using Scarlet with a healer, as sometimes you don't even necessarily need to have a healer always. Now talking about overloads, at minimum I would try to get at least 1 max ammo, 4 times attack, and 4 times elemental. In terms of priority, I would go at least 1 times max ammo, and then elemental, and then attack, and then crit rate, and then maybe 1 more max ammo for a little bit more quality of life. Any more than 2 max ammo feels like a waste unless you want to meme an infinite ammo with Tove bunnies. But at the minimum, I would definitely aim at least 1. For the ammo percent, I would aim for it to be at least the roll between 52% to 64% so that it ends up around 14 to 15 base ammo. If you don't make it, don't sweat it too much. Elemental is important, and I would highly advise this as we're treading into endgame where there's more and more DPS being released, and one of the bigger reasons to choose one over the other is because of elemental typing instead. Trust me on this. If you have to choose between attack or elemental, just pick elemental. In the long term, elemental is just superior right now, and especially with this shotgun team in particular too. Tove also provides a lot of attack buff alongside with Summer Knees, and then also Maid Privaty has their own self-attack buff. Attack is diluted, and you should definitely put elemental damage on her overload, as there's almost no other source of this right now. Now obviously there could be future unit buffers of elemental damage, Summer Mary aside, there's no one else really right now. Now I didn't mention hit rate because this is actually a wasted slot for her. Her weapon doesn't really give hit rate buff but shrinks the spread directly. Because of this, you aren't getting any front-loaded hit rate. Yes, in her weapon description it says increases hit rate when attacking, but in reality that's actually the accuracy or spread. She would still need over 100% hit rate from somewhere for it to be meaningful, 120% presumably for laser accuracy. And getting that much hit rate just currently isn't a feasible option. Add to the fact that 8 slots are overtaken by attack and elemental, and then at least 1 slot for max ammo, 3 slots for hit rate just isn't enough. As for cubes, I would go with Bastion. Actually, I've done some intensive testing with Resilience versus Bastion, and they actually do come out similarly in terms of overall damage. In terms of potential damage though, Bastion do come out a little bit on top if you don't have much max ammo and willing to manual time your reloads. The max ammo line in Cube with Maid Privaty has a particular reason behind it. With Tove's buff, Shotgun can shoot between 20 to 22 shots in 10 seconds, which is the duration of a full burst. Each time Privaty shoots, she gets more accuracy to her spread. However, there's a decay of the accuracy bonus over time, so you have to keep shooting to make sure that you have full accuracy. If you have Tove, there's less gaps between your shots and you can reach max accuracy bonus faster than if you did not. To max out Privaty's accuracy bonus from her base weapon shooting behavior, it takes between 5 to 9 shots depending if you have Tove's buffs or not. So ideal gameplay is you have reloaded your ammo before between 2.5 seconds to 6 seconds before the full burst happens. The general idea is to aim to have maxed out her accuracy bonus by the time you go into full burst, so that the pellets are more likely to hit the enemy. Taking into account the Bastion, Leona's buff, Privaty's skill 2, 1 max ammo is enough alongside Tove's skill 1 ammo buffs for you to be able to shoot throughout the entire full burst duration. Obviously, more sounds like there's less room for errors and reloading during full burst, but what makes this a bit more difficult is the fact that Tove's buff is RNG and can drop at any time. This can cause some inconsistencies on how much ammo exactly would be good for a smooth process. At the end of the day though, 1 max ammo is pretty much good enough to be able to shoot throughout the entire full burst duration. I think anymore is maybe a little bit more quality of life, but you can pretty much change it up to other stat like crit rate or crit damage. Now let's talk about teams. Oh boy. This is what you should blame for taking up so much time. Sure, we have Tove and Leona and Maid Privaty, but what about the other two? What about the substitutes? What about the healer? What about for what content? I'll try to answer all your questions as much as I can. Let's start with the basics. Without a doubt, Summer Anise is Maid Privaty's best buffer and the best synergy. Even though Summer Anise gets gimped by Tove's ammo buff, Tove makes up for it for the insane attack buff that she provides. It feels like Summer Anise isn't really debuffed at all by having more max ammo. On top of that, the elemental synergy between them makes them great to use against water enemies. Now the fifth option will vary depending on the content. If you don't need a healer, then Ludmilla is one of the best fifth options for this. She provides damage taken debuff while also providing a lot of damage on her own. Now what kind of content doesn't need to use a healer that you'd use this team? Some of you might not be familiar with it yet because of low level, but for many day 1 active players, they have been reaching out to level 341 right now, and there are some union raid bosses that doesn't actually require a healer and you can use this team. While we're on the topic of not needing a healer, let's add on top of this. This actually had so many options that you can pretty much just plug and play any other top DPSs. Modernia is another solid choice. I'd say Scarlet would have been good as well, but I think that even if the content doesn't exactly need a healer, sometimes the boss does these mini chip damages that makes it risky to run Scarlet. And actually, if you don't have a lot of elemental damage on Scarlet, Guilty is actually a pretty good substitute. And to similar degree, Drake is also pretty good. Some of you might suggest Maiden, but some calculation, she's not a good unless you have overloaded for her and she has lots of elemental damage. But overloading her for this reason isn't really a sound choice as there's lots of alternatives. Maxwell isn't as effective here actually due to her own personal damage being pretty low if she's not bursting, and also the attack buff being very diluted between Tove and Summer Anise. But she's an option nonetheless if you wanna hyper buff Privaty and Summer Anise. Dala is a good option, but you have to make sure that you have to fast charge with her because there's no other units that are fast charging with this. And make sure to time your reload so that you are on top of your full burst cooldowns. If you need a healer, then the main option would be Marciana, as she can provide some shotgun synergy DPS while also providing some heals. If you want some heals and some buffs, then Biscuit is a good option, and you use her burst when you're bursting with Summer Anise to synergize. If you need a stronger healer, then Summer Mary is an option, or Rapunzel for more heal over time. Now another option for a little bit more DPS, as many of you might have more copies of Pepper, then Pepper is an option as a pseudo DPS, while also providing some little bit of healing, but not really a lot. I would not really count on her for healing that much, but she does provide a little bit on it. Now what if you don't have Summer Anise? Actually, one of the best ones to use without Summer Anise is actually something you probably didn't think about why exactly, and that is actually Modernia. With Tove and Leona not having any cooldown reduction unit, this is actually one of the best times to use Modernia's burst. Keep in mind that Modernia's burst makes full burst last for 15 seconds instead of 10 seconds. Now let me read back Maid Privaty's skill 2 again just in case you didn't pay enough attention. Activates when hitting 30 times using pellet during full burst time. Attack 11.22% and stacks up to 5 times. So that means that she actually has more uptime on her skill 2's buff if you are bursting with Modernia. On top of that, keep in mind that during full burst, there's an additional 50% damage multiplier that's additive along critical damage, core shot, range bonus, etc. This bonus damage multiplier, however, is applied to all units. So you could kind of think of Modernia as kind of like a pseudo buffer in this situation, especially in the situation where you didn't even have a cooldown reduction unit. From here on then, just apply the same thing we said on Summer Anise before for the 5th slot. Basically like just the different DPSs or buffers or a healer. Now what about other substitutes? Well, in the situations of not having Modernia or using her for something else, well, since typically if we're using her, then it would be kind of like electric, so something like Scarlet would be a viable option. And then also Guillotine is another option, and then if you needed a healer or taunter that goes along with it, then you can use Noise so that she will taunt instead of hitting Guillotine, because this is a context of you're using Maid Privaty in elemental advantage. Then another option if you need the healer is having Helm as burst 3, and then having someone like Dala, for example, that can reduce the cooldown so that you can burst as often as possible with Maid Privaty. And Helm has a crit rate buff that will boost the crit rate of normal attacks if you do last bullet hit. This will end up making your Maid Privaty kind of like your main carry in this situation. I know some people might end up bringing up the topic of Sugar or Drake as the second burst tree, and unfortunately their damage isn't really up to par right now with the meta units. I mean, they're still main option if we're just specifically looking for burst tree shotguns, and really at the end of the day you just pretty much like fill in with whatever you kind of have left. Could be Ludmilla, could be Maxwell, could even be Privaty. Now, if you don't have either Tove or Leona, there are some actually decent substitutes. In general, I would aim for at least one of them to exist to make the best use out of Maid Privaty. Without Leona, the combination of Tove plus Dala is a good option. Fast charging using Dala is highly recommended so that she can squeeze in up to 13 full bursts. If you end up needing a healer, then Tove Marciana is a good option. And then when out of option, then Tove plus Guilty is a solid choice for DPS as well. Now, can it work with the bunny girls? And the answer is yes. And you can do something like this if you're looking for an elemental advantage. Tove and bunny girls, and Scarlet and Maid Privaty. Now, without Tove, I would definitely look at least into using Volume as a substitute for Tove to be partner alongside Leona. If you do end up needing healer though and your volume's occupied, Pepper is a solid option, as without Tove's ammo buffs, she can heal more frequently, or you can use Summer Mary as well. I want to preface that if you do end up using Volume, I would definitely suggest to get at least one fast charger that is sniper rifle or rocket launcher. So primarily I would say Maxwell would be a solid option in this situation, because you want to take advantage of Volume's cooldown reduction. And if you do burst efficiently, you should end up bursting at the end of the last few seconds with Maid Privaty. And another option to consider is having a Noise as a taunter and then using Guillotine or Scarlet alongside with it for electric benefits. Now, this doesn't necessarily need volume, and in fact you can actually start using another burst one that can actually take advantage of having this. And in particular, using Sakura is another good option because she does have a cooldown reduction as well. The downside here is you're going to be bursting with Noise also, or forced to burst with Noise. And in that situation, you would change Guillotine and then put in Scarlet instead. If you do have Summer Anise, then I would definitely look into Summer Anise. And then lastly, another option that you can do is Volume and then having Biscuit alongside with it as your pseudo healer. And as usual, you would burst with Leona alongside with Maid Privaty, and then you would use Biscuit alongside bursting with Summer Anise. And if you're wondering where Dorothy goes, then basically wherever I said Volume, you can pretty much replace Dorothy. With all that's being said, where does Maid Privaty stack up amongst every other team? Right now, her team does stack up between around Team 3 and Team 4. Ultimately, her appearance will depend on a boss per boss basis, like a shotgun as usual. And with many DPSs coming out and more focus on elemental, there may be even uniraid situations where we don't even use her. The question that pretty much everyone is asking for is, should you pull? If you're competitively ranking for solo raid, yes. She is a solid DPS that fills a niche. She has two main supports that enables her greatly, and that is not used by any other teams. She's currently in the same spot as when 2B came out. Our opinion on 2B back then was that 2B supports aren't actively used by any other teams, so Maid Privaty is in that same regard as 2B. Now here's a story that I would like to tell you guys, seeing from my viewers as well. Some people have resetted 2B, but some people still use 2B. It's that kind of split right now. Now if there is a far advantage solo raid that's coming out, I'm pretty sure 2B will see some use again. If you want to build an electric team, then yes, in Union Raid the Shotgun electric team will see some use that even will replace the Dorothy team. With high enough level, endgame players can min-max their unit rate without bringing in a healer and not having to worry about Scarlet or Guillotine's HP. This is a pretty huge quality of life in terms of team building. If you have no particular interest in competitive ranking, I would say she's a wish list. If you're still building in for Team 1 and Team 2 and not seeing any full completion anytime soon, then wishlist as well. There's lots of substitutes for her for now, and if you're not building off for endgame, then you can still hold on pulling. To me, the way they kind of build Privaty and Leona and Tove felt like a triplet team. You know, we have duos of bunnies and JKs. Now we have like a trio of them. Phew, alright, that's as much as I could condense talking about Maid Privaty. And I'll be honest, there's a lot more information that I actually omitted due to complexity and other things that would drag this video longer. I do like to think that Maid Privaty does make building of Solar Raid more interesting, because now we suddenly have a lot more tools and options in building a team. I like her overall design, as she wasn't really that broken and did add some unique mechanic. I just hope that shift up doesn't really stop with just her though and enable more shotgun. If there's anything that's hugely missing right now, it's a cooldown reduction that's shotgun, or a cooldown reduction that's a healer. Another thing is maybe a shotgun burst 3 unit with some full burst time extension that takes advantage of being in the state of full burst, kind of like what Modernia does whenever she's bursting. In any case, what are your thoughts about Maid Privaty? I'm interested to see what everyone else thinks of her. This video took countless of night testing because I was really interested in making shotguns work. Oh, and I'll be honest, like it's been pretty rough for the past while already. Not just in this, but like just creating all of these guides. And to be honest, I was a little bit stubborn. I felt like I could have done a lot more earlier in this video.